Head of Medicine Unit 3 at the Department of General Medicine at Vellore. She's the founder member of the Obstetric Medicine Unit and has started the postdoc diploma in obstetric medicine at CMC. She has developed communication workshops, mentorship workshops, and online teaching and blended learning course for medical education techniques and curriculum development. She conducts distance education modules on obstetric medicine for the MEd and FGID courses. Her areas of interest are obstetric medicine, medical education, communication, and leadership skills. And her topic for today is the use of AI in medical education.
Okay, I'm going to ask them to go to the... okay, so we'll start with a quick Slido, if you don't mind. And this is what I would like you to do. Just scan that QR code as it comes up. And I think it comes up fast. Okay. Scan that QR code, or you go to www.slido.com and then say, okay, you are a trainee or you are a faculty, and how frequently do you use AI in your usual regular life? Meaning, we are talking about generative AI. We are not talking the usual machine learning things, but yeah. How often do you use? I'll just give it a minute to see some response. Okay, there are 8. Okay. Let's see that. Okay, faculty occasionally, trainees occasionally. But the trainees are the ones that are, okay. I'm really glad to see this graph. Maybe I should have put I needed to have stratified it by age, but I'm really glad to see that graph because I think that's really how it should kind of go. But often what we find when you are older is like, that's probably how the faculty feel, and that is how the residents feel towards generative AI. And this is again generated from Copilot, which is another AI tool, and I'll be talking to you about that. But this is kind of sums up in a picture what AI can and cannot do. I told it, show me 2 senior professors, 2 senior physicians, 1 woman and 1 man. And then it gave me that picture. So AI is not perfect. We've got the crudest form and it's going to get better. But what is this generative AI? When ChatGPT came on scene last year, there's a lot of trepidation and a lot of anxiety about this AI going to take over. And, there's a lot of those conversations that happened. What actually happens at the back end of it, what they do is actually this training data collection. The AI gets, or the GPT, which is basically generative pre-trained transformers. That is what GPT stands for. And what it does is they kind of give a training data set. Now, the data set can be the World Wide Web. It can be a set of books. It can be just PubMed. So based on which GPT, it gets trained on a certain set of data. And what happens is all these words are put as tokens, and the relationship between these tokens is kind of established. And then there is this transformer architecture. Okay, this is like a neural network underneath. We see this input and we see this output, but there is this network, very similar in a way to the way our brain activates. So you hear a horn, you see a vehicle, and you are crossing the road, you need to step back, right? And that is because you get these input, there is a processing that happens in your brain, and there is an output that happens. Very similar, there are these transformer layers, which is thanks to the computing that happens. And that is that transformer architecture. So there's a lot of feed forward and these probabilistic thinking that kind of gets put into this transformer step. And then there is an output generated. Now, output generated is used to kind of feed. So what you do is, this is my son who's doing his IT, who kind of tried telling it to me very simply. He said, Amma, if you know the max sum and you know the answer and you feed it into this set and you find that the number is right, then you kind of feed and say, this is right. If it comes wrong, then you say, no, this is wrong. This is how you should be thinking. So this kind of feeding of feedback happens within the model even before it is sent out to us. And then it is kind of, it's been, it's kind of, the number of AI that has come out. So can I just have a show of hands? How many of you have used any of these sometime or the other? Okay, it's a good thing to kind of take a picture of this and try out all of these. Okay, just go and play with these, because I think just getting familiar with it is half the issue. And take a picture of that and try out each one of these. Okay, now what happens is, if you've gone into ChatGPT or have an account with ChatGPT, just like we put a text into Google search, right? You kind of put a prompt, and that prompt is what kind of gives you the output. Very similar intuitively to what we do with Google search. It's not very complex. The prompts needs to be specific. The more specific you are, the better your answer is going to be. Give it context. Okay, so if you're giving ChatGPT or you're giving Perplexity, say, okay, this is a class for third year medical students. Okay, and to differentiate seizure from syncope, generate 5 MCQs with reasonings for each response. Now, the more you get, the richer and better your output is going to be. Okay, so it's good to give that context, but be aware of the bias. What am I saying? Why am I saying? Go to ChatGPT today and type in the 5 most impactful presidents. Okay, who do you think come up? 5 US presidents. There are no presidents in the rest of the world. Okay, ask, there's no other president. There are 5 presidents. If you say 5 judgments that have had the maximum impact on humanity, it would be 5 Supreme Court judgments which will come from US. So it is trained. So just like, if you look at a meta-analysis, remember we look at this funnel plot and say there is a publication bias, right? If the whole funnel plot is not populated, we say this part is there, but this part is not there. And in the World Wide Web, if you kind of put in data, the maximum number of publications or the output is coming from a certain country or a certain region, and not from the other region. So what happens is that bias will get perpetuated. So you need to know the bias, and you need to kind of adjust for the bias. So those pictures that I showed you, the first picture was actually all white. So then I said, hey, no, I don't want white. And it was all men. So then I said, no, I don't want physicians who are all men. I want both gender. And then it gave me some of the junior physicians were some women in that first picture that I showed you, and then I said, no, I want race, I want Indian. And then it kind of showed me a different picture. So recognize the bias and be aware of the bias. And that's how you kind of overcome it. The other thing is to give feedback. Each time you give feedback and say, yes, that's awesome, but can you show me this as well? Then you kind of get a better output. So it's important when you're doing this with the chatbot to give that feedback, to say whether it's right or whether it's unexpected. This is not what I want. This is how I want it. So keep giving that conversation. At the end of the day, I think this is the most important part. You are the content expert. Okay, and you have to edit and check facts and validate. If you don't do this step, it's like, ChatGPT is an assistant. It's a tool. It is not the master. So we shouldn't let ChatGPT or any other GPT actually kind of take over our intelligence. So we need to have be the content expert. So you need to, even if it comes from ChatGPT or if it comes from Perplexity or it comes from Consensus or whatever be the AI that you use, you should cross-check to see that it is actually right, what is said. Okay, and I'll show you some tools that can be used which are better than others. Okay, so when you're doing a prompt, this is a way of thinking: task, audience, purpose. Okay, so I say create case-based MCQs, that's a task. Context, the audience is the third year medical students. And what is the purpose? To differentiate syncope from seizures. So if I put these 3, your output is going to be a little better than if you kind of just said MCQs for differentiating syncope from seizures. Okay, So just to give you, okay, so what have you used generative AI for? I'm just going to go back because this computer doesn't have Slido. So I'm going to go back to that and say, okay, can you just go back to your Slido and say, how have you used generative AI? Because I'm sure there's a richness here. There is a lot of young people there. So I'm sure a lot of you have used generative AI. Okay, the other thing about the Slido is that I cannot connect back to who wrote it, so you're safe. That's the best thing about Slido. Okay. Never used to generate, okay, to generate research questions, improve vocabulary, grammar, quick explanations for things I don't understand. To help with condensing article. Okay, it's a very good tool for summarizing. Yes. For medical images, queries, concepts at high school level, writing summaries, proofread emails to make it polite. Again, it's MCQs for students to decrease word counts. Okay, that sounds like thesis submission uh, or article submission. Yeah. Okay, for grammar correction. A lot of you seem to be using it for to get differential diagnosis. Okay, please take note. Okay, to get differential diagnosis, explanation, summarizing, writing research. Okay. To generate research questions. Okay, that's an interesting one. Okay, so I'm going to kind of uh, writing the short summaries. Okay, now we're getting more truth. Thank you, guys. I mean, see, we know everyone is using, okay? Uh, that's a good one. Okay, so let me just go back to my slide and then I'll come back and show you a little bit more on what it can be used for. Maybe I should do this. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So let me show you a couple of things. Okay, one is something better than probably ChatGPT is consensus. Okay, so consensus is trained on academic articles, so it has a uh, little better output than. So if I say, okay, symptomatology in autoimmune disorders, I think this came out as one of my lectures or something. So I said, okay, tell me what are some of those things, and this is probably some nonsense that I got. Let me look at. I kind of finished up all my list, and that's why it is. Okay, let me just ask a question. Okay. Uh, okay, so anti-MDR TB therapy for pregnant women. What happens is you get a summary. Okay. And this summary doesn't just give you a summary, it also tells you, see, adverse outcome, recommendations, conclusions. What is nice about this is that you can actually click on that and it will tell you where did that fact come from, whether it's a systematic review, whether it's a rigorous journal, and whether it is a highly quoted journal. These are all observational studies, whereas this I know is a systematic review. That is a very rigorous journal. So how highly quoted is it? So you get a lot more information. And if you click on that, you could actually go back to that article and you can read it just like you would in PubMed. So this came from BMC, pregnancy, childbirth. And so it's really good for getting answers. Okay, what GPT's done is it has democratized information. So somebody who's sitting in remote hospital in Chhattisgarh still has access to this information, even if they don't have a huge library at their disposal. Okay, so this is really good. Consensus again good. I'll show you perplexity again. That's a nice one because what happens with apologies for doing this, but we didn't get a lunch break, so I didn't get to uh, get this happening before. But okay, let me just do. Okay, so what it does is, again, this is my topic or what I thought I should be talking about. It gives me a summary and it gives me the references. Okay. Uh, the the nice thing about this is that I can actually look at all these and pick out and say, okay, I don't want these. These are all nonsense. I don't want these journals. And you can actually take out those and put in what you want. Let me show you another one. This is Notebook LM. This is from Google. You go to Notebook LM and you can upload your documents. And I'll show you an example of what I've already done. I've just uploaded 10 of my. So your Zotero list can kind of go into that and it will give you a briefing document. It will give you a summary of all of that, again with those references. And what is even more interesting is this, where you say, okay, I want an audio overview. And it will give you an interesting podcast of a conversation between two people. Just let me play that for you. I don't know.
You know those topics that folks kind of tiptoe around? Well, we're diving right in today. No hesitation.
Oh, straight to the deep end. Let me guess.
Depression during pregnancy? Got our stack of medical journals right here, ready to break it all down. 6 of them.
Okay, there you go. That's just a flavor of what you can get. You want to get a podcast, all you need to do is put your Zotero list into Notebook LM, and it generates not just a briefing article, it can give you a FAQ guide, it can give you a study guide, and it can even give you a podcast. So you want to do something with it, run with it. But again, back to what we actually talked about, it's important for us to realize at the end of the day, you are the content expert. Okay. And the reason I'm saying is because we need to understand the limitations. I already talked to you about bias, and you must have heard about hallucination. When GPT doesn't have an answer, it will hallucinate and it will set up these, these references that sound very right. Okay. And if you actually cross check to see that does this exist, it doesn't exist. So it's important to know there is bias and there is hallucination. But what is actually most important is human agency. And the reason I'm saying human agency is that everything is a tool. And at the end of the day, the human who's using the tool makes it good or bad. Right? Just like anything is neutral, the way we use it is what actually makes the difference. So some of the problems with when you have something like this is academic dishonesty. And that is something I came across. I was just doing a course in Coursera a couple of weeks ago. And I was quite surprised because in the introduction, right at the beginning of welcome, it actually spells it out like this. It says academic dishonesty is defined as, in addition to 2-3 things, which is plagiarism, cutting and pasting, it also said, if you use artificial AI to create, edit your work and submitting it as your own, unless you're instructed, that's called academic dishonesty. They spelled it out in black and white. Now, these are good universities, University of Michigan, Stanford, those, the courses that came in Coursera. So it's important for us to actually define those boundary lines, because if we don't, it becomes all gray and then it becomes all acceptable. The second is plagiarism. And to talk a little bit, if you have to use AI or if you have used AI for research, either writing or help, there are 3 principles that are outlined, and that's the reference. It's a living document on recommendation guidelines on how to use AI. 3 more important principles. One is honesty. Second is respect. Third is accountability. What it says is, if you have used it, you have to be honest about it and declare it. Second, you have to respect and can't cut and paste from somebody else and take it and use it as your own. The third is accountable. If what you said, you take responsibility for the content you have put out or you are publishing. So it is important. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you if you are the author of a paper. So you can't say, oh, I used GPT and so there was a problem. The next problem is actually the cognitive impact. Like I have my little son who says, Siri, what is 550 into 550? Instead of sitting and doing it, very different set of generation that's coming up. So will we just stop using our brains? Because I can just put and say 5 different things and say, okay, these are generate differential diagnosis given this scenario. Will I stop using my brain and putting things together? The second thing is saying, there is this bias that comes in because GPT said, oh, I start doubting myself. That must be right because GPT said it. So both of these biases are something that we should be aware of, that we do not outsource our brain. And the second is that just because GPT says doesn't mean it is true, and we have to ensure that we use it. So what is the way forward? I think the first step is to learn and plan to use it. Second, role model good use, because each of us who use GPT, any GPT for anything, need to say, yes, this is where I've used it. And then develop strategies to kind of incorporate it into your teaching and teach and train your trainees, because if you don't, then they will learn it on their own. It's very much like parenting. If we don't teach children some things, then they will learn it from the wrong sources on their own, and then we are in trouble. So are the robots going to rule the world and take over? Not really. But I think there's going to be a lot more of work where we collaborate with technology, and we can't say I'm medical science and I won't do technology. We will have to incorporate it more and more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to invite Dr. Ramya